Welcome to this explainer. Let's get right into mastering the exact procedures for AFCS, or Automatic Flight Control System, failures in the Bombardier Q400 aircraft. You know the drill. When you're in the flight deck and a failure message pops up, you need to act fast and accurately. We're going to walk step by step through the manual's procedures, break down exactly what you need to know, and give you some killer memory tricks so you literally never hesitate when those alerts flash.
Here is our flight plan for this explainer. First, the AFCS controller in-op alert. Second, what to do if the autopilot remains engaged. Third, if the flight director is active. Fourth, if knobs are inoperative. Fifth, the AFCS fail alert. And finally, memorizing the steps. Let's start with number 1, the AFCS controller in-op alert, your initial warning.
When this specific message, AFCS controller in-op, pops up on your primary flight display, your aircraft is telling you something very specific. It's detected a failed flight guidance control panel, the FGCP, or a stuck button. It's basically a heads up that the standard panel you normally rely on is compromised. So your awareness has to immediately shift to the what-if scenarios that dictate your next physical moves in the cockpit.
Moving on to Section 2, IF the autopilot remains engaged, taking control. Now, the manual gives us an absolutely crucial note here. It explicitly warns that you might not be able to disengage the autopilot or the yaw damper using the standard FGCP, AP, or YD buttons. Think about that for a second. The exact buttons you'd normally press to take manual control, they might completely betray you in this moment because of that failed panel or stuck button we just talked about. You just can't rely on them.
Because of that, the procedure mandates a really clear alternative action. First, realize those standard FGCP buttons are likely dead. Second, completely bypass that central panel. Instead, you've got to use the AP dis button, the autopilot disconnect, or the GA button directly on your control wheel to disengage the autopilot. Basically, get your hands away from the dead panel and rely on your immediate flight controls. To effortlessly memorize this, just remember this simple trick: wheel over panel. When the panel throws an INOP alert, your hands should instinctively go straight to the control wheel. Wheel over panel links the FGCP failure directly to using those control wheel buttons. Keep that phrase in your back pocket. It's a real lifesaver. All right, Section 3. If the flight director remains active, navigating modes. Here's the kicker in this scenario, straight from the manual's notes. It warns that you might not be able to select or deselect certain flight director modes. And worse, the pitch wheel itself might be completely dead. So you could find yourself stuck with your current modes, totally unable to dial in any pitch changes. It's definitely a restrictive situation that forces an immediate change in your navigation strategy. To safely finish the flight, the source gives us 2 distinct, approved paths. Option 1, use alternate flight director modes, if they're actually available and working. Option 2, if those modes are totally compromised, fly the aircraft by reference to raw data. You just strip away the automation guidance and fly the numbers yourself. Anchor this one in your mind with the phrase raw over flaw. If your flight director has flawed, stuck modes, or a dead pitch wheel, you go to raw data. Raw over flaw guarantees you always have a solid fallback plan when the automation degrades. On to number 4. If knobs are inoperative, finding data. So imagine a situation where a nav source, course, or heading knob on your side just stops working. The action here is super specific. You have to reach over and select the HSI SEL, the horizontal situation indicator select, on the unaffected side. You just switch it to left or right as required, depending on which side had the knob failure. This is a brilliant example of how the Q400 systems build in redundancy. Once you've selected that unaffected side's HSI, your whole focus has to shift. The manual dictates you now use the primary flight display source data from that newly selected side for the rest of the flight. You're effectively just borrowing clean, good data from the other side of the flight deck. Remember this with the phrase, switch the side. Deadheading or course knobs? Don't panic. Just switch the side at the HSI SCL to grab that clean PFD data. Simple and effective. Section 5. The AFCS fail alert. Total system failure. Okay, this is the big one. We aren't looking at an INOP message anymore. You're seeing AFCS fail on your PFD. This means both flight guidance modules have completely failed. And because both are gone, the manual is crystal clear here. The autopilot or yaw damper will absolutely not engage. The system is entirely down. When both of those modules fail, you need to immediately recognize that you've lost 4 vital services. You lose the autopilot, you lose the yaw damper, you lose the flight director, and, really importantly, you lose the flap automatic pitch trim. That last one is a massive aerodynamic factor that you are literally going to feel in the controls as you set up to land. To recall these 4 lost services when the pressure is on, just use the acronym AUFF: Autopilot, Yaw Damper, Flight Director, Flap Automatic Pitch Trim. AUFF. If you can pull those 4 letters to mind, you instantly understand the entire scope of what you've lost when that AFCS fail message lights up.
Finally, Section 6, memorizing the steps for configuration changes.
Since we know we've lost that flap automatic pitch trim, the manual has a very specific note about changing your flap configuration during this failure. Let me ask you, if you're configuring for landing and you move from flap 15 to flap 35, or vice versa during a go-around, do you know exactly what physical consequence is coming your way? The answer, straight from the procedures, is a significant increase in the pitch trim requirement. Because the automatic system isn't there to help you compensate for the massive changes in lift and drag when those large flaps move, you're going to have to manually trim the aircraft way more than you're used to. It's going to take real physical effort and anticipation. Use the rhyme 15 to 35, trim comes alive, so your hands are physically prepared to manually trim. Literally, every time you touch that flap lever during an AFCS fail, repeat 15 to 35, trim comes alive. It reminds you that the nose of that Q400 is going to want to move heavily, and you are the only one who can trim it out. Now, the manual does note one last condition. If the message extinguishes, you're actually cleared to re-engage the autopilot or yaw damper. The system has recovered. But that leaves us with the ultimate question. If things degrade and those warnings stay on, are you prepared to execute these exact steps, bypassing the panel, switching the HSI, managing that heavy pitch trim, without a single moment of hesitation the next time you step into the cockpit?